This is another video in the SudokuPrimer series. Go to SudokuPrimer.com for more Sudoku help and techniques and tips, and also for a video of all the, an index of all the videos of this channel. This is a diabolical puzzle. It was published by the Daily Telegraph on September 22nd, 2017. This is a request by one of the viewers of this channel, Andrew Veej. And Andrew, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong. Andrew requested that I show how to solve this puzzle using the techniques that I use. So we're going to go ahead and solve it. You'll notice that I've already filled in a bunch of numbers. These are just numbers that are easy to fill in just to get the puzzle started. And at this point we're kind of stuck. I can't see any way of continuing to make progress on this puzzle with the techniques that I normally use. So I'm going to use a different technique here. And I just want to point out here that this row right here has two triplets in it. The numbers missing are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And you'll notice there's a 1, 3, and 7 here, so this cell can be a 2, 4, or a 5. And there are 1, 3, and 7s here. So these two cells can be only be 2, 4, or 5. So those are triplets, 2, 4, or 5. And this is either a 1, 3, or 7. This is a 1, 3, or 7, and there's a 1 here, so this is a 3 or 7. And because of these triplets, we know that because of this 5 and these triplets, that a 5 has to go in one of these two places. This has to be a 3 or a 7. Because of the 5, one of these being a 5, then one of these is a 5, and one of these is a 5. Just wanted to point that out to get started. Now we're going to use a technique called trial and error. And sometimes I call it what if scenario, which is a little bit different than trial and error. Now I always use a pen when I do Sudoku puzzles because I don't mark candidates. But when you use trial and error, then I switch to a pencil. And what I do is I usually find twins. You can do this with a single number, but it works better with twins. And you fill in what could be the right numbers for the twins. Here in this box there are only 2 cells empty, and there are 4 or a 5, so I'm just going to put a 4 here. And I'll put a 5 here. Now you'll notice I wrote it a little bit smaller, and don't confuse these with pencil marks or marking candidates like many people do. I'm not doing that. I'm just putting in what I think might be the number. And there are only 2 numbers possible here, so I have a 50-50 chance of getting it right. Okay. Now another thing you can do, sometimes a puzzle will be so difficult you won't even know where twins are. Right here we've got a 1 and a 1, so one of these two are a 1. So I could have just chosen one of these 2 cells and placed a 1 in it to get started. But if you only have a single number like this 1 in this example, you don't have as great a chance of finding as many numbers. Here we're placing 2 numbers, and they both have a 50-50 chance of being right. Okay, now 3 things can happen when you're and I guess once I place the numbers, I just start filling numbers in with a pencil, and I make them smaller so that I can see which ones are penciled numbers and which ones are pen. Because if we run into a situation, we may have to erase these. Because I know this is a 5 because there's a 5 here, and I know this is a 5 because there's a 5 there. Okay, and so what I do is I continue on, just like I place those two 5s right there. I just continue on trying to solve the puzzle. Now, three things can happen. First of all, you can solve the puzzle. If you solve the puzzle, you know that the 4 went there and the 5 went there and everything worked out, and great, you're done. The second scenario is you can run into a conflict. And that's where, if you place the numbers in the wrong places, eventually you'll run into a place where you'll have too many 2's in a row column or a box, or you'll run into a place where you can't move on and you know something's wrong. Okay, so that'll be a conflict. And then the third scenario, you'll just run out of moves. And all three of those things can happen when you use trial and error or what if. Okay, and let me just explain what if real quick. Sometimes it's quicker, especially if you only have a few cells remaining that need to be populated, to, rather than write the numbers in with pencils, just imagine a 4 here and a 5 here and try and solve the puzzle in your mind just by looking through the situation. That's a really good mental exercise, because then you have to remember where each number goes. Like, for example, you imagine a 4 here, so you know one of these has to be a 4, and therefore one of these has to be a 4, and you just go through like that. So that's the difference between what if and trial and error. So let's continue on with our trial and error. We're going to see if we can solve this puzzle using this strategy. Okay, we've got a 4 here, and so one of these is a 4, therefore one of these is a 4 because of this wall here. So we know that those two rows are covered, so we know that's a 4. Okay. Because of these 4s, this can't be a 4. Right. And because of this 4, we can place a 2 here. Because that's the only number left. Okay, now let's look at this right here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. 4, 5, and 7 left. Here we got 4 and 7. Okay, there's a 5, so it's a 4 or a 7. 4 or 5, 5 or 7. I can't do anything with that. Let's see, we know this is a 4, so therefore one of these two is a 4. So this has to be a 4 here. Okay, so that leaves a 2 there. And, with our 2, 4, 5s here, then that would be a 2 because of this 2. And what do we have left here? Just a 5. So place a 5 there in that column. Okay. Now we've got a 4 or a 5 here, and if you remember, we have ghost 5s here, so that has to be a 4, and that's a 5. So far, everything's looking good. So what do we have here? 2 and 3. We can't solve those. Let's see. Okay. This is a 4 or a 7. This is a 4 or a 7. We got a 4 there, so then no, that's a 7. So this would be a 4. Because of this 7, we've got a 7 there. Okay, so this would be a 5. because of this 5, we know this is a 5. So we got a 5 here and ghost 5's here. That can't be a 5, so it's one of these two. Okay. See, what do we have left here? 1, 2, 3. Oops. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, and 5. There's a 2 and a 5 there, so that would be a 1. Okay, there's a 3 here, so that'd have to be a 3. Okay, so we've got 2 and 4 left. There's a 2, so that'd be a 4, and that would be a 2. Uh-oh, we've got a problem here. There's a 2 here already, and that's the only place a 2 can go there. So we've run into a conflict here. And because of that conflict, we know that this isn't a 4 and this isn't a 5. So now you see why I used a pencil. I have to go in and erase all of these. But we did learn one thing on that, and that is, since we have a 50-50 chance of getting these right, this is a 5 right here, and this is a 4. So, and because I know now that that is a 5 without question and that is a 4, I'm going to fill them in with pen. And let me just finish erasing all the numbers I put in. And again, if you can master doing this using what-if scenarios without using a pencil or just imagining it in your mind, it's quicker. Because once you find a conflict, you don't have to erase. You can just move on. I've done it using what if. I've done it from memory, and I can tell you that it does take longer. It took me a while longer to get to the point where I could do it quickly. And it's very good for memory because it helps your memory, because you're exercising your memory, because you have to remember where all these different numbers go. But it is possible, and I like doing it that way. Now, because we know these are 4 and 5 now, I'm going to switch to pen again and continue solving. So there's 4 there, so we know that's a 4. And we know that's a 4. We know this is a 5 because ghost 5's there, ghost 5's there, and a 5 there. Therefore, that's a 5. And we can place a 7 there. 7 there and a 7 there, so we know that's a 7. Okay, let's see. Let's just go through sections again now. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2. 2, 2, anywhere. 2, 3's. 3, 3, 3. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. 4's. Now we have some 4's. Before I did this trial and error, we didn't have any single 4 in the puzzle. Now we've got some 4's, so we know one of these is a 4 here. So we know that one of these is a 4. We know that's a 2 or a 4. We know this is a 2, 4, or 5, and this is a 2, 4, or 5. So we got 4, so we got 2, 4, 5. So we still can't solve those. We've got a 2 and a 4 there left. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. We got a 3 and a 4 there. These are 2 5s here. Alright, I don't see anything unless I'm just missing something. Let's see, 1. Let me just go through the sections one more time. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4s. I think I only got 4 to 4 last time I did sections, so 4, 4, oops, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5s, 5, 5, 5, 5, 6s. 6s are done. 7s. 8s and 9s are done. Okay. So it looks like at this point we're stuck again. So let's continue on with trial and error. Let's try putting a 3 here and a 4 here. And see if that gets us farther along here. Okay, so with a 4 here. Okay, so that would be a 4 there. So we know that's a 2. Let's see, did we? 4. One of these is a 4. Yep. Okay, so that's a 4. I was going to say we know that's a 2, but I don't think we do at this point. Okay, but we can put a 4 there. So therefore that's a 4, and that's a 2. Okay. So the 2 has to go there. 4, 4, 4. Okay, so what are we missing here? We got 1 and 4 missing there. 2, 4. 2, 4, 5. 2, 5. There. Alright, so what was this? 1 and 4. Okay, so let's just go through the sections again. 1, 1, 1. 1, 1, 1, 2. Okay, there's a 2. Okay, so got a 4's there, so that's a 4, that's a 5. 5. Okay, so you got 1 and 4 there, so that's a 1. So 4. Oops, I'm sorry, that's a 4. That's a 1. Okay, so we got 1 and 5 left here, and there's a 1 there, so that's a 1, and that's a 5. So we've got a 1 there. 1, 1, 1. 2. So that's a 5 there. What do we have left here? 2 and 3. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, and there's a 2 there, so 2 and 3. We have a 3 and a 7 there, so that's a 3 and that's a 7. Okay, we got 3, 3, 3. 2, 2, 2. These are 2 5s there, so there's a 2, that's a 5 there, that's a 2. So 2, 2, so that has to be a 2, and that has to be a 2. 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 and 5 are missing there, so that's a 5 and a 3 and a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 3 and 7, there's a 7, so that's a 3, and that's a 7. Okay, so that's it. So that's a good example of using trial and error when you run out of moves. And like I said, when you use trial and error, you could either solve the rest, like we did on the second trial and error that we did. And once you fill in all the numbers, you know you've got the right numbers in the right places, and you've solved it. You could have a conflict, like we had a conflict on this 4 and 5, and if you do, if it's twins, or if you've done a single number that can only fit in 2 places, then you know that you've got it in the wrong place, and all you have to do is either swap the twins or move the single number to the other cell that it can possibly be in, and you've resolved the conflict. And then you can either then at that point you can either finish solving the puzzle, or you run out of moves again. Once we found the 4, 5, the conflict, when we put a 4 here and a 5 here, I knew that these were in the wrong places, so at that point I could switch to pen again, and because I knew the 4 was there and the 5 was there. Okay. When I did the 3, 4 trial and error, I switched back to pencil, and I started writing smaller numbers just in case I got these wrong. And if that's the case, I can just erase all the pencil numbers and swap these like I did the 4, 5s. Well, thanks for watching. That's a good example of solving a puzzle where there are no logical solutions, or at least in this case I couldn't see any, and so therefore I switched to trial and error. And that's how you can use trial and error to solve puzzles. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next video.